Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which it is. It's quite a nice bright morning here when I record this first video in a Bach series. Bach's sonatas, 6 sonatas and partitas for solo violin are, you could say, the Mecca and at the same time the Holy Grail for all serious violinists. Mecca in the sense that at various stages in their career they tend to face in that direction and to move towards it. Holy Grail because they are elusive, these sonatas and partitas, and I think it's true to say that the best violinists in the world usually feel that they've never quite got everything out of them that they will eventually get. There's more to explore. In this first video we'll have a look at the history of the pieces and some aspects of how to approach them. In the other videos we'll explore some movements from the sonatas and partitas, and at the end there will be a question for you all with a 2 CD set of the music as a reward at the end for whoever gives me the answer correctly first. The only clue I can give you to that is that the question is not based on anything I'm going to say, but it will be based on things to which you will be listening, things you will hear. So here we go. This music was completed in 1720. In other words, it was 300 years old last year. Bach was Kapellmeister, head of music, at Köthen, an ancient comfortable town in fertile land near Halle, and the seat of the princes of Anhalt at that time, now of course in Germany. Other important pieces, the cello suites, the Brandenburg concertos, and many keyboard works were completed during Bach's 6th year term at Köthen. I think the only occasion on which he wasn't engaged as a writer of religious music, but of connected to a cathedral or a large church, but as somebody who primarily wrote secular music. Now, as I say, they were written in 1720, but they weren't published for 84 years, and in 1804, Simurg was the first to publish them. There are 3 sonatas in 4 movements. There are 3 partitas in varying numbers of movements. Ferdinand David was the first significant violinist to perform them in the mid-19th century. David was a friend of Mendelssohn, and he was in fact the dedicatee of the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. More significantly, because he took them on for most of his career, was Joseph Joachim a little bit later, and he introduced them to a wide public. It's not known whether they were performed in Bach's lifetime, though he knew and worked with very able musicians, some of whom, probably only a few, could have played them. And he himself would have been able to play at least some of the movements, because he was a good violinist. What is very likely from contemporary sources is that he and other musicians played them on the keyboard. His obituarist, Johann Friedrich Agricola, wrote that Bach often played them on the clavichord, sometimes adding new harmonies and other additions as he did so. It has been suggested that he wrote them as studies, pieces written to develop a certain point or points of technique, rather than performance pieces, though as they are clearly carefully planned, each one as well-balanced, multi-movement works, that is open to question at least. Even if they were written as studies, there are plenty of examples of outstanding sets of studies, often called études, which are regularly used as concert pieces, and you just need to look in the direction of Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Liszt, Debussy, Scriabin, Ligeti and others, and you'll find them there. The sonatas and partitas have been arranged for and played on viola, guitar, lute, organ, harpsichord, and piano, and probably some other instruments too. In all our examples, there are differences in stylistic approach, recording, age and resonance of recording, and I shall say now that I am not going to identify the players at this stage as we hear them, so we can focus solely on the music, but I will tell you at the very end who they were. A while ago, Tom Davison presented a program, a very interesting program, which he called Same But Different, and that's where we're starting with the sonatas and partitas, with different approaches, significantly different approaches to some of the music. Quite enlightening, actually. This is very much what happens with these sonatas and partitas, and let's hear now what one player does with the Tempo de Boria from the first partita. That just means a bourrée. And here is that player. For the point to be made, we don't need to hear more than that opening statement. Here's another player, exactly the same music. Bach, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, did not put tempo markings on these pieces. And you can see how differently these two players interpret that particular piece. In fact, the first player doesn't quite take twice as long, but the first player takes 33 seconds and the second player 20 seconds for exactly the same music. Just a little digression here. I said that Ferdinand David and Joseph Joachim were the first to perform these works to large audiences. Of the two, Joachim's contribution was the more significant, and we are very fortunate to have a recording made in 1903, when he was an old man, of two movements. One of his is this very tempo di Boria by Joachim. Let's hear it, and as we do so, be aware that the player you're hearing made his London debut aged 12 with Mendelssohn conducting. He played the Beethoven concerto. That he was a close friend of Robert and Clara Schumann, that he was present, not literally present when Schumann died, but certainly there with Brahms and Clara Schumann. That he worked with Franz Liszt in Weimar for several years, and that Schumann, Brahms, Bruch and Dvorak all wrote violin concertos with him in mind and under his guidance, that is, Joseph Joachim. He was also a good, though infrequent, composer, and his portrait was painted by John Singer Sargent. So this is a very historic recording, and we can hear the whole of the Tempo di Boria. It's less than 2 minutes long. You have to make big allowances for the recording. Joachim was past his best by then. Even so, that's formidable playing. But I promise not to offer any more recordings of such antiquity. It is a privilege, though, to hear a player who was so important historically. and he's still playing well despite the limitations of the sound. Now, same but different again. Here's the opening of the first sonata, the very first movement of the first sonata in G minor. It's played by two different players, and we'll just hear the opening statement from them. And now another player, exactly the same music. Here we go. Now that's not a difference in tempo. In fact, as it happens, those two players take exactly the same length of time to play that extract, 1 minute 34 seconds. But the big chords, of which there are several, are approached in a different way. The first version is much bolder, much less inward. In the first version there is vibrato and indeed portamentos, little sliding between notes. But in the second version, very, very little, and I don't think there's any portamento at all. And also, though this is less easy to spot, the fingerings are different, and in some places the tone colour of the music is not the same in the two different performances. Lots of things different. It would be easy for such works with a sequence of movements for just one instrument to become dull and repetitive. Bach always avoided this by the simple method of contrast between movements. And I want to give an example of that. And this comes from the second partita, which is maybe the most famous single work in the six, and the third and fourth movements. We'll hear the third and fourth movements played by the same player, and the contrast will be very striking. When I say the third and fourth movements, just an extract of each. That's how the player begins the third movement, which is a sarabande. Now we have the same player with the fourth movement, which is a jig. Yes, there you go. Contrast. Finally, the last point I want to make in this video, that was not a point, by the way, of course, of differences between approach by different players. It was just differences in movements. But the final one, there is a difference of approach. And I'm going to play a very famous recording of the Gavotte et Rondeau from the third partita. This is very famous. It was actually sent up into space as one of the golden records on Voyager in 1977, and it's still floating about there somewhere. Music which represented the best that the human race could provide was sent up into space in case there were aliens there who might want to listen to it. Anyway, this is that very performance of the Gavotte and Rondeau from the third partita. a second performance of the same gavotte et rondo, in which the player follows the acceptable 18th century practice of decorating some of the music, adding little musical ornaments, little runs and little grace notes and things like that. Not very often, but it does happen, and it's a different approach. You'll hear for this happening most towards the end. Anyway, here's this other performance. Now, all of this chopping the music up and playing little extracts doesn't do it any good really musically, but it does serve to illustrate how differently it has been perceived over the years. And of course, there are reasons why this is, but for now we'll move on in video 2, which will glance at these reasons before exploring some of the movements in these very remarkable works.